There was a man who chose silence every morning for 27 days. The same hour, the same chair. No phone in his hand. No guided meditation playing softly in the background. No affirmations whispered into the air. No vision board taped to the wall. He simply sat, eyes open, breathing slowly, gazing into empty space with a quiet smile that never tried to mean anything. To the outside world, it looked like nothing. To his friends, it looked like stagnation. They joked that he had lost his ambition. His mentors worried he was falling behind, wasting precious momentum. They couldn't understand why someone with talent and potential would suddenly stop pushing. But what none of them saw was that this man was not stopping. He was dismantling. He was taking apart, piece by piece, the internal machinery that had been running his life for years. The identity that believed worth came from effort. The conditioning that said progress required struggle. The subtle tension that whispered, "If I don't do more, I will fall behind." Every morning, as he sat in silence, he allowed those patterns to surface without feeding them. He didn't argue with them. He didn't fix them. He simply let them lose relevance. By the 28th day, something strange happened. Without sending a message, without pitching an idea, without launching a project, 3 opportunities he had dreamed about for years arrived in his inbox. They were clean, simple, almost embarrassingly easy. No chase, no proving, no force. To anyone watching, it looked like luck. To him, it felt inevitable. This is the part no one dares to tell you. The quantum field is not responding to what you are doing. It is responding to who you are being when you are not trying. Most people never realize this, and that is why they burn out. That is why they repeat the same timelines under different labels. That is why they do all the right steps and still feel unseen, disconnected, quietly resentful that the universe doesn't seem to notice their effort. They are fluent in the language of action. But the field speaks only frequency, and not the frequency you perform, but the one you rest in when no one is watching. When you are not scripting your future, when you are not scanning for signs, when you are not trying to convince reality to cooperate. That state, unguarded and unpolished, is the signal the universe responds to. This is not mystical thinking, it is coherence. Your body is a transmitter. Your thoughts carry electrical charge. Your heart emits a measurable magnetic field. Together, they create a vibrational signature, an energetic fingerprint that is constantly broadcasting. Not your desires, not your affirmations, your state. That is why you can be doing everything right and still feel stuck. You can journal with precision while radiating desperation. You can visualize abundance while your nervous system is locked in survival. You can say you trust the process while your body is braced for disappointment. That invisible contradiction is what keeps timelines from collapsing. This is not about blame. It is about precision. Because the moment you understand what the field actually hears, you stop wasting energy trying to persuade it. You stop negotiating with reality. You stop performing spirituality. You begin to embody. The man who sat in silence was not lazy. He was recalibrating. He was remembering something most people forget in the noise of trying to make life happen. You are not here to earn alignment. You are here to return to it. And that return cannot be manufactured. It can only be felt. Most people try to manifest using tools the field does not recognize. Words, strategies, hustle, rituals layered on top of unresolved tension. But the field is not logical, it is vibrational. It does not decode effort, it reads emotional posture. It responds to the energy you are doing things from, not the things themselves. So here is a question that cuts deeper than most techniques ever will. If you stopped all external effort today, would your energy still be magnetic? Would your presence still feel grounded, open, available? Or would it collapse into anxiety, urgency, and waiting? This is the invisible truth. Manifestation is not about doing nothing. It is about becoming someone who no longer vibrates from lack, someone who no longer performs for results, someone who no longer asks the field to deliver, but lives as the version of self the field naturally responds to. Once you understand this, confusion dissolves. You stop wondering why certain things are not showing up. You begin to recognize the signal you have been sending and how to shift it, not through force, but through emotional congruence. You have probably felt this before, a moment when everything on paper looks right. You are disciplined, organized, optimistic, yet beneath it all, your body feels unconvinced. There is a subtle tightness in your chest, a quiet resistance you cannot think your way out of. That is the moment the field listens most closely, because the universe is not parental. It does not reward effort or punish mistakes. It is not moral, it is mathematical. It mirrors coherence, it reflects resonance, it responds to signal, not strategy. And that signal is always now. In neuroscience and quantum biology, this is called state-dependent encoding. Your nervous system stores expectations based on emotional repetition. If you repeatedly feel lack while thinking about money, your body associates abundance with tension. If you repeatedly chase love from a place of fear, your system encodes connection as danger, and the field simply reflects that back to you, not as judgment, but as fidelity. Imagine a tuning fork vibrating at a certain frequency. Place another tuning fork tuned to the same frequency across the room, and it will begin to vibrate too. No contact, no effort, just resonance. That is how manifestation works. The field does not grant wishes, it responds to coherence. When your intention, emotion, and embodiment align, you become a broadcast tower. Opportunities do not arrive because you asked. They arrive because you are vibrating at their frequency. But here is the paradox that stops most people. The moment you try to be in a higher frequency, you leave it. Trying implies resistance, wanting implies absence, performing implies insecurity, and the field picks that up instantly. This is why so many people plateau. They work from the mind while the body carries fear. Their words speak expansion while their nervous system rehearses contraction. The conscious mind says one thing, the subconscious broadcast says another, and the subconscious always wins because it speaks in emotion, and emotion is magnetic. You can write, "I am abundant" 1,000 times, but if your chest is tight and you are watching the clock, waiting for proof, your real signal is impatience. That is what the field responds to. The quantum field does not understand future tense. There is no "I will" in the language of energy. There is only now. If you are always becoming, you never arrive. If you are always reaching, you are broadcasting absence. and reality obeys that signal with perfect accuracy. Many people unconsciously use manifestation as a performance for safety. They believe achievement will make them worthy, so they chase results to feel okay, not realizing that the chase itself radiates lack. That is the trap. The field does not respond to effort. It responds to energetic posture. And if your posture is built on proving, earning, or grasping, you push away what you want while thinking you are moving toward it. The solution is not to abandon action. It is to shift from performer to broadcaster, to stop proving and start transmitting, to stop acting as if and start embodying as is. The most powerful manifester is not the one with the most tools, but the one who needs the fewest, because their frequency does the work. This is where identity enters the picture. The question most people never ask is this: who are you before you start manifesting? Not what you want, not what you visualize, but who you assume yourself to be beneath all intention. That assumption is the source code. It is the energetic blueprint the field responds to most. Your identity is not created in vision board sessions. It is wired into your nervous system. It lives in the stories you repeat internally, the emotional cycles you rehearse, the way you expect life to meet you before it does. If your identity is someone who struggles, you will manifest challenges that confirm it. If your identity is someone who must work hard to be seen, opportunities will come wrapped in effort. If your identity is someone who receives, life responds with ease. Not because you deserve it, but because you are coherent with it. This is why silence is so powerful. Silence strips away performance. It reveals the frequency you return to when you stop trying. That is why the man sat and smiled. He was not waiting for results. He was dissolving the identity that needed them to feel whole. When that identity loosened, the field responded instantly, not because he asked, but because the static cleared, the signal stabilized, coherence returned. You do not need to force your future into existence. You need to stop broadcasting resistance to it. You need to let your nervous system learn safety in the present moment. You need to become familiar with ease without guilt, with stillness without fear, with worth without effort. When that happens, manifestation stops feeling magical and starts feeling natural. Timelines collapse not because you chased them, but because you became compatible with them. And once you understand this, you will never manifest the same way again. You will stop asking what to do and start asking who you are being. You will stop chasing signs and start stabilizing states. You will stop performing spirituality and start living coherence, because the field has always been listening, just not to what you thought. Let me show you how this actually works in real life, beyond theory, beyond rituals, beyond spiritual performance. You can wake up at 5 in the morning, light candles, meditate for 45 minutes, repeat "I am abundant" 108 times with perfect discipline. You can do everything that looks aligned from the outside, but if your body still carries the identity of someone who was rejected, someone who had to hustle for love, someone who learned early that being visible was dangerous, your signal will still be coded with contraction. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing everything from the identity of someone still trying to become, not someone who already is. This is the silent saboteur of manifestation, an identity wired for effort, attempting to speak the language of ease. and the quantum field, which only understands vibration, cannot translate that contradiction. It does not respond to what you do. It reflects who you are being. From a quantum perspective, identity is not just psychological, it is vibrational. Every thought you think, especially when paired with emotion, releases a specific neurochemical pattern. When those patterns repeat, they form loops. Over time, those loops become familiar, and your brain, designed for efficiency rather than happiness, defaults to what it knows. This is what is often called the familiar past, a state where the future is simply the past repeating itself unconsciously under new circumstances. But identity is not stored only in the mind. It lives in the body. It is somatic. It exists in your breath, in your posture, in the way your shoulders subtly tense when you anticipate judgment. It shows up in the micro-contractions that happen when someone says your name, in the way your stomach tightens when opportunity appears, in the pause before you speak your truth. Your body remembers who you have been, and if you do not interrupt that memory, you will keep manifesting not what you desire, but what your nervous system is trained to expect. This is why high vibration practices sometimes stop working, not because they are ineffective, but because they are being performed from an old identity. It is like trying to install new software on a device still running an outdated operating system. The command is correct, but the system cannot process it. The signal glitches. The field does not reject you. It simply preserves coherence. Here is the paradox most people miss. Your new timeline cannot attach to your old self. The quantum field knows this. That is why it seems to resist delivering new outcomes to those who are still embodying expired identities. This is not punishment, it is precision. The field protects alignment. So how do you change identity without forcing it? You do not replace beliefs by arguing with them. You do not become someone new by reciting affirmations louder. You change identity by embodying a new frequency consistently until it becomes natural, not performed, not maintained, lived. This begins with awareness. You learn to catch the moment you slip back into the old self, the one who doubts, the one who scans for signs, the one who tries to control outcomes. This shift is subtle. It might be a sigh, a tightening of the jaw, a sudden urge to check your phone. These micro-responses are signals. They tell you when you have re-entered an identity your future no longer supports. Instead of judging that moment, you meet it with presence. You recognize that the old self is simply a habit, not a truth, and habits dissolve when they are no longer rehearsed emotionally. Your new identity is not something you put on, it is something you tune into. It is not a costume, a vibe, or a curated aesthetic. It is a frequency, and when your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to align with that frequency, you stop asking reality for confirmation. You become the confirmation. This is where a simple but profound practice comes in. Not a ritual that takes hours, not something that requires candles, music, or performance, just presence. We call it the Coherence Pulse. The Coherence Pulse is a 90-second practice designed to realign your identity signal before the world tells you who you are. It is not about attracting, it is about transmitting. You begin before you reach for your phone, before you scroll, before you consume the past through messages, notifications, or headlines. You sit, eyes open or closed, it does not matter. What matters is this: you transmit before you receive. You take a deep breath in. On the exhale, you imagine your chest expanding, not just with air, but with signal. You are not just breathing, you are broadcasting. Then you choose 3 words, not affirmations. Frequencies, states of being you choose to live from, not what you want to have, but who you are willing to be today. Words like grounded, magnetic, open, or calm, certain, complete. You whisper them or think them softly. You let your body match them. You do not force emotion. You allow sensation. Then you imagine those frequencies radiating outward like a pulse, not in a hopeful way, not in a begging way, in a knowing way. You are not asking the field to give you something. You are stating clearly and calmly, "This is who I am today. This is the signal I am sending. This is the version of me the field will meet." This is where the real shift happens. Most people finish a ritual and immediately return to their old identity. They perform alignment and then default to contraction. But with the coherence pulse, you anchor a new identity before the day begins. You set the tone before the world projects its expectations onto you. What follows is subtle but undeniable. Your posture changes, your breath deepens, your decisions become cleaner. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear. Not because you are trying to be confident, but because you are no longer responding to the old field shaped by your past frequency. You are walking inside a field you are actively generating. You did not chase it. You became the signal it could not ignore. This is the real magic. Not instant miracles, but immediate coherence. And coherence reorganizes reality naturally, effortlessly, often invisibly. Here is your invitation. Do this for 7 days, every morning, before anyone else's energy touches yours. Let this be your broadcast. And to anchor it even deeper, mark this moment now. Comment below with these words: "I am the signal," not because you want to manifest faster, but because you finally understand that the field never needed your effort. It needed your coherence. In the next part, we will explore what happens when you live from this coherence throughout the day, in conversations, in decisions, in moments of doubt and distraction. Not by fighting the world, but by becoming immune to its frequency. When you no longer react, you begin to direct. And from that state, reality has no choice but to follow. Because when you stop chasing, you begin collapsing timelines. This is the part most people don't expect. You've transmitted the signal, you've pulsed the field with coherence. For a brief moment, 5 minutes, maybe an hour, everything feels lighter, clearer, synced. Your breath slows, your mind quiets. There's a subtle sense that things are already moving, even if nothing has visibly changed yet. And then something happens. A message arrives that triggers doubt. A delay awakens old anxiety. A familiar situation reappears and quietly invites you back into the version of yourself you already decided to outgrow. This moment is not a failure. It is the test, but not a test of willpower. It's a test of energetic stability. The quantum field doesn't test you to punish you. It reflects you to show you where the broadcast is weakening. It reveals where your frequency is still conditional, still dependent on circumstances behaving a certain way. This is where most people unknowingly collapse back into their old timeline. Not because they weren't aligned, but because their alignment wasn't yet anchored deeply enough to hold through resistance. But what if holding your frequency didn't require force? What if alignment was less about discipline and more about remembrance? You don't need to fight old patterns. Fighting gives them energy. You only need to become more consistent in the signal of the new self. Consistency, not intensity, is what stabilizes a new timeline. Let's talk about how frequency is maintained not through big breakthroughs, but through small, silent agreements you make with yourself throughout the day. Micro decisions, subtle responses, emotional signatures that quietly affirm who you are being. Most people believe manifestation happens during dramatic moments, awakenings, rituals, quantum leaps. But timelines actually shift when your tiny choices stop contradicting your new identity. Imagine this: you receive a message that would normally cause you to contract. The old self would overthink, rush to respond, or try to fix something immediately, but instead you pause, you take a breath. You smile not because you're pretending, but because you remember, I am the signal. That pause is not passive, it's quantum recalibration. It tells the field, I no longer react from my history, I respond from alignment. In that moment, you don't just hold your frequency, you deepen it. Another moment arises. You feel the urge to rush, to control, to chase clarity, and you interrupt the pattern. You ask yourself, would the version of me who has already received this feel this urgency? If the answer is no, you embody that no. You slow down, you trust the pulse, you transmit instead of grab. These moments stack. They form a new energetic posture, and posture is power. Posture tells the field, I am safe enough to allow. I am certain enough to not prove. I am already what I've been trying to become. And when that posture stabilizes, timelines accelerate, not because you're pushing harder, but because you're no longer pulling against yourself. Now let's add another layer. To maintain coherence throughout the day, your environment must become a mirror of your frequency, not a test of it. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or avoiding contrast. It means curating your inputs with intention. Ask yourself, what music supports the version of me I'm embodying? What scents, textures, or lighting remind my nervous system that I am safe in the now? Who are the 3 people in my orbit who speak to my future self rather than reinforcing my past? Even more subtle, what thoughts will I no longer entertain? Not because they're wrong or bad, but because they no longer belong to this signal. This is energetic hygiene, frequency stewardship, not obsessive, not rigid, intentional. And when you do feel yourself slipping, you don't spiral. You return to the breath, not to calm down, but to broadcast. You whisper your 3 words, you pulse again, you become the transmitter again. Because the truth is, you're not trying to stay in a high vibration, you're becoming unavailable for anything else. Over time, this stops being a practice. It becomes your baseline. You become emotionally immune to chaos, not numb, but anchored, not detached, but sovereign. You feel the world without being dragged by it. And the field starts to bend. It organizes, it rearranges. It delivers not because you demanded, but because you stayed still where you used to flinch. You stayed open where you used to brace. You stayed certain where you used to question. That's what changes timelines. Now we arrive at the final truth. The moment when techniques, rituals, and strategies dissolve into something quieter, simpler, more powerful than anything you could force or perform. Manifestation at the quantum level doesn't happen when you perfect the practice. It happens when you forget the need for the outcome. When your frequency becomes so whole, so internally aligned, that the field has no choice but to match you, not as a reward, but as a reflection. This is where surrender begins. Not the misunderstood kind where you give up or lower your standards. Not surrender born from exhaustion. Real surrender is a vibrational decision. It's when your being is so congruent with your intention that you stop monitoring the timeline. You stop scanning for evidence. You stop asking the universe to prove it's listening because you're no longer separate from what you asked for. Surrender here is not passivity. It's precision without tension, calm action without attachment, soft eyes with a sharp spirit. And here's the paradox. The moment you no longer need the thing begins looking for you. Why? Because the field responds to freedom. Not freedom from effort, but freedom from attachment. When you release the energetic grip on when, how, and why not yet, your signal becomes clear, potent, inevitable. This is what Neville Goddard called living in the wish fulfilled. Not hoping, not waiting, not chasing. Being now, the version of you who doesn't ask anymore because you already are the vibration of it. And in that moment, time collapses. Synchronicities align, doors open, messages arrive, people remember you, ideas surge, and none of it feels like effort because it wasn't. You didn't do more. You became. That is the difference between performance and power, between force and flow, between trying and transmitting. So as you move forward from this moment, don't add another layer of effort. Subtract the noise, exhale. Trust that what's meant for you doesn't need convincing, it only needs coherence. Let today be the day you stop using your energy to get somewhere and start using it to become someone, the version of you who speaks the language of the field fluently. And when that happens, everything you once imagined begins to orbit you, not because you chased it, but because you finally tuned into the truth. You were it all along, and if something stirred in you today, if something clicked, resonated, or helped you remember who you are, you're already in the shift. You're not alone. This is more than a video. It's a frequency, a space where science meets soul and the signal strengthens together. If this vibration resonates with yours, subscribe, not for more content, but because this is a movement, and you are already part of it.